Hi, I'm Jason Gorber. We're here to look at the Mondo by Defunc headphones. These are over-the-air headphones from a company called Defunc, Defunc. They're based in Sweden, like a number of companies, the products I reviewed. It seems that Sweden is sort of home to this sort of mix of real cool, cutting-edge design and appealing to the sort of home audio market, the audiophile market, headphones, that sort of like. And Defunc is certainly reaching that. You can see it's a very slick, looking box, nothing, sort of quotidian about this. Really bold designs, almost Bauhaus in their construction. But yeah, with the angled box, you see this on the shelf and you think this is something pretty cool. And the headphones themselves certainly derive a great deal of aesthetic pleasure. We'll get into that. There's a bunch of text written on the front. On the left column, a bunch of specifications, stuff like, the 40 plus 10 millimeter dual driver setup, Bluetooth 5.2, it's got aptX HD for decoding, 102 decibel signal level, a battery capacity of 622 milliamp hours for 45 hours of playback. I mean, what's nice about over-the-air headphones is you can put these big, chunky battery packs in and make it work for hours and hours and hours, dozens of hours, compared to the smaller batteries, obviously, that you get in your headphones. Dual microphones and a measly 279 grams, so 275 grams, excuse me. And this particular model, they come in different colors, but this particular model is transparent. We'll look at that in a sec. But I have to point out what's on the right side, because this is where some of the slightly more bombastic elements are. It says that it has clean highs and pleasant lows. It's like, well, okay, whatever that means. It has truer audio. It has maximum power. It says enjoy sound just longer. That's what you get with the 45 hours. The louder, the better. I mean, again, we'll get into the louder stuff. Make yourself heard. Like, okay, well, actually, I want to make myself hear. But yeah. And then comfortable as, and then F star star K. And I'll let you guys sort of determine what that word is. So these are comfortable as F. And that is what they're advertising on that. And in fact, all of this hyperbole, I think that's the one that actually really stands to. But that will be articulated in a sec after we look inside. Inside we get, under the flip, the phones themselves. And again, I got the transparent kind here for review. Inside the box we have these. They are, comfortable. They have the nice right and left ear pad. Really simple, incredibly light. Really, really comfortable. And because it's clear, you can actually see sort of all the chips and all the nonsense that goes on inside, as I've turned it on inadvertently. On this side, you have the mini jack. You have the USB-C charging. You can see the white light that is lit up here. You have this dial, which is a control dial. It both pushes. If I actually want to turn this off, I can hold it down for 30 seconds. And you can see that the light will turn off. And then you have this volume up and down switch on this side, which is actually super helpful. So that's obviously the right side. So when it's on your ear, all your controls right there. On the left side, I got nothing. But what I do have, and nice, is because it's clear, this giant box in there, that's the battery. So the battery sits on this side. Obviously, there's wiring that goes here for the driving, but the battery sits on this side, and the rest of the control electronics are on this side. And because it's transparent, you get to see what's going on. Now, also inside the box, underneath the little plasticky thing, I like that it keeps turning on as I sort of even look at it. You get a bag, and this is your transport bag. The headphones themselves don't collapse. There's no sort of bending, but they do sort of, if you rotate them this way, they can go and they can fit comfortably inside the bag for transport, just like this. It's not secure. I mean, you throw them into another bag, but it's not like it's a hard case like you get with some other models. And then you have, charging nonsense. You get a nice book that sort of gives you an indication about all the processes for you to download the app that's available for both iOS and Android. And you get this, and I'm a fan of this in theory. First of all, kudos for using wired headphones. It's a wired option. When you're on a plane, when you're somewhere, when your laptop, you just want it to work, wired. And obviously that plugs into the mini jack at the bottom here. Because it is springy, it is springed, as it were, It's great because this makes it very portable and very easy. It's not going to get tangled and stuff like that. The issue is that the length is just that if it's coming from here from your headphone, the device itself is just not far enough away. So if it's in your pocket or something like that, there's a little bit of tension that's on there. And so the cable itself is sort of ends up pulling on your ear. It's not as ideal as one would want it to be. But I like the idea. We just need probably a few more coils, like maybe a few more coils here or a few fewer coils, whichever way we're going to work, so that we have a little bit more distance. That's one thing to consider. Now, I will also note that unlike some, it's not a full complete bypass with electronics. You have to have some battery charge in this in order to use the mini jack. If it's completely dead, it does not work, which means that you can't use this for X number of the 45 hours and then switch to wired. They don't suddenly become complete bypass wired headphones. Now, they're very, very comfortable. When I put them on, they're fantastic. Decent noise separation. It's not active noise canceling, but the pads themselves do a decent job of sort of breaking out. I sort of sound like I'm underwater. I get a bit of hollowness here when I'm actually speaking, but they're incredibly light and super, super comfortable. The plastic is smooth, but is not obnoxious. The pads themselves is some of the best material I've seen. It's memory foam with a little bit of sort of a rubbery, sort of fake polyester, whatever this is, a plasticky thing on the outside. Very, very comfortable. The headband itself is very comfortable and very light. It's sort of hard plastic that feels like metal, which again is part of what makes it feel so light. You can see that I can adjust this very, very readily. And immediately I have these backwards. Yep, I had it backwards. There, with the control mechanism, very easy to do. The dials are here. Very simple, even with all this hair. That is by far the best. They're incredibly comfortable, well-designed physically. Now here's where it sort of takes a slight turn, because the sound on these is at best fine. Middling is a word I'd use. For what we are comparing these to, which is something sort of within the same market, I think that you get a bit of bass. It's a little bit sort of underpowered. You don't really get a punch unless you really crank up the EQ. The highs are a little bit, muddled, and the lows are really anemic. You're getting sort of a scooped out sound right from the outset. Now, the app does allow you to adjust EQs, but I found even adjusting EQ, it still sounded, the sound stage was very narrow, and I played everything from, really bombastic things like 2049 on the 2049 soundtrack by Hans Zimmer is really one if you want a real, knockout track. All of this from Tidal at the highest resolution possible. I even tried to wired from very high resolution files, 24:192 files, DSD files from my portable player. And yeah, overall, not great. There was some timbral difference, very minor, between me plugging into wired versus using wireless, which leads me to believe that basically there's probably an ADAC to ADC before the DAC goes out. So basically it's analog in, converts it, and then spits it back out. So it's still going through control electronics. As I said, not a full bypass, which means using external devices doesn't really make the sound suddenly amazing. But it also shows, in some ways, the sort of fundamental aspects of the drivers themselves. Despite having two drivers, I really hoped for a much more open, much more dynamic sound. Not one that, emphasized certain tracks or certain frequencies, but one that just gave me a very rich, very full soundscape. And these don't really do that. Now, if you're just listening to podcasts, if you're listening to a lot of electronic music, if you're listening to a lot of stuff that's been processed, frankly, if you're listening to a lot of music the last 20 years, these are going to be fine. This is perfectly great and engineered for the majority of stuff that's on streaming because it's very compressed anyway. The audio doesn't have a huge dynamic range. And because of that, because everything's kind of, the lows, the very quiet stuff is almost as loud. And a quiet instrument, if I'm just whispering, it shouldn't be as loud as me speaking this loudly. And yet if you run that through not audio compression, but in terms of like MP3 compression, like file compression, but audio compression in the sense of like taking the lows and moving them up and taking the highs and moving them down. So everything, if you look at a waveform, is all kind of like straight ahead. These headphones are fine. If you're listening to podcasts, which are normalized to that level all the time, they're great. If you're out on a subway or listening in a loud environment on a plane, even though they don't have noise canceling, the nice sort of ear pads did a decent job of cutting out external noise. But if you're sitting down and doing some critical listening with these and treating them as sort of maybe not your reference pair, but certainly something in this range where you would hope to get something that just gives what the music, the intended music of the original mixing engineers are, these are not them. So they're good to middling at best in terms of performance of straight up audio satisfaction. Where they really shine is their comfort, how light they are. Their build construction seems pretty decent. There's not a huge amount of metal in here, so as long as you take care of them, it'll be fine. But they don't feel flimsy. It doesn't feel cheap. It's just I'm let down a little bit by the sound. But as I said, it's all about what you're listening to and what you're looking for. I would rather wear these for 10 hours as something that sound amazing, but I get tired of having on my head after 20 minutes. So if I'm certainly on a trip or something like that, just having these light, have them in your bag and actually put them in, especially if you're also using in-the-ear headphones and you get tired of them being in your ears and you want to sort of mix it up and sort of do that sort of thing, these are something that I think you should look at. The control is decent. I found the app, after like 10 times of trying, I was totally unable to actually do a firmware update on my system, which happens to be Android. It's just one of those things that it's as if we're most of the way there. And I have a feeling, I'm going to make a prediction, which is usually a fool's errand, but I have a feeling that the next model of this is going to be even better, that I think that they're going to be able to tweak the sound signature even more, get the most out of the fundamental hardware, but keep a similar form factor. I think they spent a lot of time on the design and the comfort and stuff like that, not a huge amount of time on how the things actually sound, and that's why I felt a little bit let down by that. So your mileage will definitely vary, so I encourage you at the very least to check them out and let me know in the comments what you think of the actual sound signature. For me, that was the biggest disappointment, because I really had high hopes that something this light and this comfortable to wear would give me everything that I want. Promises of 2-driver, promises of aptX HD, that we're going to get something that absolutely is competitive with similar spec headphones, over-the-ear headphones in this range. And unfortunately, these simply let me down. I wish I had better news on this, but yeah, I think for certain circumstances, as a second pair, as something listening or travel, they're definitely worth your time. But if these are the only ones that you're actually looking at, there may be other models for you to actually consider. Simply a suggestion there. That's our look, a sort of a mixed look, as it were, on the Mondo by Defunc. I would very much recommend you giving them a listen yourself. And as I said, let me know in the comments below what is your consideration of these. And yeah, I will see you next time. All the best.